Alrighty, welcome to Umpqua Tying Night. We're just going to jump right into it. The first fly we're going to get to tonight is the Shock Collar Leech, obviously available through Umpqua Feather Merchants. This is the color combo we're going to tie tonight, the black with the chartreuse collar and head. This fly is available in 4 colors, black and chartreuse, peacock and olive with an orange collar and head. So we've got 2 very bright color combos with a naturalistic back end, and then 2 colors, one that's all peacock and olive, and one that's mostly all black with a black and purple collar. So 2 a little bit more realistic colors. This fly is a fantastic kind of all-purpose leech. You can hang it under an indicator. You can strip it on a floating line or an intermediate line. You can fish it shallow, you can fish it deep. Commercially tied, and the way I tie it is fairly light. It just has a brass bead, no lead to it, no tungsten, so it sinks fairly slow. So you can strip it slowly through shallow water without any issue of it plummeting. It comes in 2 sizes. This is the 10. This is the one we're going to be tying tonight. This is a 24.99. Like I said, in a 10. The other size is tied on a 6. So it's a considerably bigger fly. This fly is also very good as a small little streamer to tie off of a big streamer. If you're fishing moving water and you want to fish 2 streamers, you can trail this off of the back of a bigger streamer and have success with it in that aspect as well. So we'll jump into it. We're going to throw our hook in the vise with our bead already on there. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to put it, I'm going to cock it way to the back. So just grab almost damn near the hook point so you can get access to the bend very easily. I don't have a really long tail on this fly. It's fairly short, about one shank length. So I'm going to use the curvature of the hook to get the bend in the fly with a fairly short tail. So I tie it way down into the bend, and putting the hook in this deep into the vise like this, it just makes it so much easier to get to the bend. And we're going to go about halfway down the bend right to there. And this is 6.0 black. Every fly I'm going to tie today is either going to be done with 140 or 6.0. We're going to take some pine squirrel. And again, like I said, we want it to be about a shank length long. So just measure, not the fur, kind of just the hide and just about the top of the shank. Right there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just give yourself a rough measurement. Come in, give yourself a nice clean part in the fur so you can get right to the hide. You're going to put it right on the top of the shank, right where we stopped our thread. Then you're just going to come in over the top, get it where you want it, pull it tight. And 1, pull tight 2, pull tight 3, pull tight 4, doing your best to just stack these wraps right on top of each other. Pull tight 5, that's plenty. Pull this back, put your thread underneath in front, go forward a little bit, come back and jam your thread right up against that hide. That's going to help lock it in place too. And then at this point, you can put the vise or the hook back in the vise in a normal fashion. And we're going to come forward. Next material we're going to use is going to be the belly of this fly. This is semi-sealed dubbing. Fantastic material. I actually just realized last night when I was pulling all the materials for today's shoot, I have 4 flies with Umpqua. Every fly I use this material at least once. It's one of my favorite tying materials. For this fly with the black and chartreuse color combo, I'm going to use Black Magic is the color. It's color number 49. There's 50 colors that this stuff comes in. It's a very coarse, long fiber dubbing with flash mixed through it. It's fantastic. So just grab a big bundle out of the bag, and in the bag, obviously, all dubbings, they get all twisted up. And since this is a long fiber dubbing, I want to kind of alleviate some of that. So I just grab a bunch of it and pull it and stack it. This is going to help kind of align the fibers, get them untwisted a little bit. You're never going to get them straight by any means, but you can get them untwisted. And then once you do that a little bit, just throw it on the table. And now we're going to make a dubbing loop. If you're unfamiliar how to do that, what I do is I take my bobbin, I pull it right at my chest, and then I'm going to take my pointer finger and put it on the thread. The distance between the hook shank and my finger is going to be half of the loop because I'm going to come back. So the longer the loop, the longer the dubbing loop you want to make, the farther you can put it all the way out here and end up with a massive loop. You can put it closer wherever you want. So we're not going to do much. We only need to cover that much of the shank. And what I'm going to do, so give yourself, I don't know, 8 inches or so. Finger in, thread back onto the shank, throw it over it twice, and then lock it down. Now you've got your running thread is there, and then you've got this loop, just untwist it, and you've got this big loop that you can work in. And basically we're just going to run this back all the way tight to the squirrel. Bring our thread back up. Next thing you can see is I stopped my thread up here. This is going to become very important when we want to finish this fly. So we've got our thread. We're going to have to tie off the dubbing loop and the pine squirrel. And then we're also going to put a fairly big collar on this fly. So you don't want to wrap either the dubbing loop or the squirrel tight to the bead, because then you're just going to have no way to finish this fly. So give yourself minimum of full beads width back to where we're going to tie off all of these materials. You can see I just leave it completely bare on the shank, just so it gives me a visual reminder of where I need to stop so I can finish this fly correctly without too much dubbing and too much thread right up behind that bead. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our dubbing that we kind of pulled and stacked, and I hold it in my left hand with my finger still in the loop to hold it down here. And then what I do is I grab the corners of it and just basically grab the very, very corners of it and pull it out. And you're going to get just a bunch of little wispy fibers. I'm not taking this and putting this in here by any means. Just a small little pinch. What comes out goes in. Small little pinch, put it in, and just basically, as I go farther down, I tend to move the dubbing loop, horizontal, so that obviously gravity is now in my favor. Materials aren't going to fall down and fall out of the loop. And just work your way down until you give yourself, fill that loop up, put your tool in, and you give it a little bit of a spread too, even after I put it in. Very, very sparse. You can see how sparse that is in there. Not clumped up in any way. To spin this, I go up to the dubbing where the dubbing starts. I pinch the tool super, super tight. I'm going to, about as hard as I can hold it, and then I'm going to spin this. That's going to twist that in between there. Once that's tight, let it go. And then it's going to shoot up the thread and spin that super, super tight. And a couple more spins, you're good to go. I've found that you can overspin 6-0. If you have something big and coarse, as we get into some flies later tonight, where I'm going to be putting rabbit fur into a dubbing loop, I have found that 6-0 will break if overspun. So I generally switch to 140 if I'm putting very, very coarse materials that I need to spin extremely tight into a loop. Things like dubbing, 6-0 is absolutely fine. You're not going to break it as long as you don't over twist it. Like that, break it out with a nice brass brush. And then all we're going to do is palmer this up the shank. Each wrap, come in and just wrap them back. And we're going to come back in and brush this like crazy after we wrap it up. So you're going to, as you wrap it, you're going to trap a lot of fibers. The hook gap's going to grab a lot of those fibers, but don't worry about it. Just wrap it up. And each wrap, just pulling it back, you can see how sparse this is. Once we get to that thread indicator of where I want to stop, come up, 1, 2, I switch hands, pull up, pull down, take with my left hand, I come in, I pull everything back, and then I jump up onto the loop to lock it. Some fibers got forward, we'll lock them, and come in, little tiny triangle with your scissors, just push and pull. That goes in the trash, and then at this point, we're going to come and rake this out. So when you're raking out dubbing, you always want to, or at least I want to, good tip is always rake everything forward to start. So come in here with the end of this brass, bristle brush and rake everything forward. That's going to pull out any loop knots, any tangled fibers. It's going to get everything loose from the shank that got twisted while you were palmering it up. Once you have something that looks like that, at this point we're going to essentially kind of treat it like a scud. So we're going to pull it down. We want all the fibers down to either side. So whatever fibers lay on each side, just let them go that way. Pull that down. Then at this point, we're going to take our squirrel zonker. We're going to pull it over the top. I don't worry about parting the hide at this point. On the tail, it was very important. For the head, I don't. I just pull it tight wherever it lays. I hold it there. Come over the top. 1, 2, 3, 4 is plenty. Grab your scissors, come in, cut it fairly close. Then we're just going to come in, bury this down, and then come in at this point. You can even grab your brush, clean this up. And then rake these back. I like to get it wet with my fingers, pull this back. All of that semi-seal underneath is it's nice and long, so it's gonna basically fill up underneath the hide. It's gonna give the belly a nice kind of hint, sparkly, ness to the fly. And you've got, the black on top, the movement of the pine squirrel, the flash of the semi-seal. Very, very good, combo at this point. And that's what, essentially it should look like. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna get rid of this black thread. And I apologize, I only brought one bobbin with me today. I forgot to grab multiple, so bear with me. 1 sec as I switch colors. What I'm putting in the bobbin is 140 chartreuse. We want it to match our collar color. So we're gonna use chartreuse dubbing, so I want chartreuse thread. And you can see at this point, before I go any further, we have the big bump where we tied off the squirrel and the dubbing loop. And then in front of that bump, we still have space, right? That's not super tight to the bead. This is a fairly small bead for this hook size, so there's not a lot of room to work behind this bead. So that's very important that there's still a little bit of space, because that's where we're gonna have to tie this big coarse dubbing loop off. If this squirrel is already touching this bead, you're gonna have a hard time to do the next step cleanly. At this point, we're just gonna move this back, and then the next material we're gonna use is same material. We're gonna jump into semi-seal in chartreuse, and this is color number 6. Same thing we did before, just take a bunch of it, pull it, and stack it. And I just like to clean off my work area, get all that black out of the way so we don't get any black into our collar color. And I'll just use, this is all I have left of this bag. I'll just use all of it for now. It'll be actually it's gonna be way too much. Just a little bit more. So give yourself about, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches, right? Just kind of move it up and down. It's gonna stick together pretty well. So you about like that. You can kind of just push it, hold it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna sacrifice one edge of this dubbing to start. So all I'm gonna do is just go and cut it clean, right? We're gonna flip it over. And again, it sticks to itself pretty darn well. And essentially for this collar, we want it to be about 1/4 inch on either side, because the dubbing is gonna go directly in the middle of this dubbing loop when we make it. So we want about 1/4 inch on each side. So cut this to about 1/2 inch, maybe a little bit shy of 1/2 inch. And we're gonna go up the other side and sacrifice that other side. So you're gonna end up with this kind of, column of dubbing that's cut nice and clean on each side. Just put that down on the table. And now we're gonna make another dubbing loop. Pull it at you, obviously pointer finger in again, back onto the hook shank, 1, 2, just throw it over, lock it down, and then lock it back. And we wanna tie it off right behind the squirrel. And then move your thread back to behind the eye. And again, now we have a chartreuse loop to work in, and our running thread is right there. Carefully pick this essentially kind of column of precisely cut dubbing. Pick it up, and again, it sticks to itself very, very well. You don't have to be too careful with it, but you don't want it to kind of fall apart at the same time. We're gonna put that into the loop, and now you can see we have this nice, consistent column. On the belly, we left the dubbing super unruly, super buggy, stretched way out. The collar is the complete opposite. We want it to be a nice, consistent collar. On the fly, we want it to start behind the bead, go back about 1/2, 3/4 of a shank length, and kind of stop. If we didn't do this and just put the dubbing in the loop, it would consume the whole fly and everything would just be chartreuse. So we need that consistent width of this dubbing to make this collar nice and clean. And at this point, throw the tool in so nothing falls out. And then again, like the belly, come in and just kind of separate it a little bit. We liked it nice and stuck together so we could pick this up and move it around. But at this point, we want to kind of clean it up and get it a little bit sparser. You should have something that looks like that. And at this point, you can hold it in here. If anything is unruly, is not where you want it, just go ahead and take it off. And then we're going to spin this like the other one. Hold it right behind the dubbing. Spin this. This is going to get nice and tight in through here. Once that gets tight, you'll feel it in your spinner. Let it go. And it's just going to shoot up, and it's going to spin that collar of dubbing nice and tight. Couple more spins once it shoots up, but that's plenty. We're going to come in and again, aggressively rake this out. If you're not familiar and you don't do many dubbing loops, I'm going to show you how to do a whole bunch today. Every fly that I'm going to do today has at least one dubbing loop in it. But one thing is, get a good quality dubbing brush and rake it out. And if you find lots and lots of materials in your brush, this is not tight enough. It's simple enough. If the material is falling out, I get asked that all the time on how to do it correctly. The main issue with everybody that has problems doing this is you're not spinning it tight enough, and when you rake it, the materials fall out. Just every once in a while, spin this loop so tight that you break the thread, and you'll give yourself an idea how many times you can actually twist this, and it is a bunch before the thread will break. 140 in a loop is very, very hard to break. And again, your brush should be, you can rake this out as aggressively as you want. Your brush should be clean. And then at this point, we're pretty much done. All we're going to do is palmer this nice and tight. Each turn, we're going to wrap it back, creating a nice, distinct collar. And we're going to get to that bump, and it's going to fall down off of that pine squirrel bump. Once we get into that kind of notch, I give it about one turn, come back up, pull it tight. 1, 2, switch hands, pull up, pull down, come in, fold everything back, and then clean this up. Once you've got that locked in place, you can come in, cut the rest of this loop off. Little triangle with your scissors, push and pull, way down deep in there. It's not going to go anywhere. And then there'll be a little bit of dubbing that's going to be left. Just pull that off. At this point, give yourself a good quality whip finish. I would hit this, I forgot to bring any sort of head cement other than UV stuff, but a little drop of head cement on this would not hurt this fly one bit. And again, rake it forward. Always want to rake it forward to unlock any trapped fibers. And once you're happy with that, come back and rake it all back. And you're never done until you say you're done. If you look it over, there's a fiber right here that didn't get pulled back. There's a couple fibers there. If there's anything long, just go ahead and take them off, or anything that you don't want on there. Like I said, you're never done till you say you're done, and that's it. Very, very good fly. Caught a lot of quality fish on this. A lot of friends have caught a lot of quality fish on this. And that's it. Pretty simple enough. On to the next.